I would say, like, if I'm being totally unscientific about this, I would say that in our female clients, I would say about 80 to 85% of their foundational problem is an intimate partner issue. So their husband, their female partner, like whatever, it's a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend problem. And
Hmm.
then I would say in about 10% of the cases, it's their relationship to work. And then in about 5% of the cases, it's like some miscellaneous thing, often their relationship with their mother. And I don't mean that in like a Freudian kind of like psychoanalytic sense, but often they're caregiving for aging mothers, or their mother's very critical and is very present in their life as a critical voice, which they then internalize. So, and then you can have all these things together, right? But very rarely do we see people who are totally relaxed and happy in their lives who have eating problems. It's kind of as simple as that.
Welcome to the Calorie Conundrum Podcast with Coach Strick. Join us as we expand the weight loss conversation to beyond just calories and dare to ask the question, why does eating less and exercising more sometimes not produce the desired results? Here's Coach Strick to discuss this Calorie Conundrum.
Well, hello everyone, this is Coach Strick, and on today's episode, we once again dig into the podcast archives and pull out another fantastic interview. Dr. Krista Scott-Dixon is our guest, and we talk about everything from coaching to eating disorders to the issues with traditional ways of trying to lose weight. Dr. Krista is the Director of Curriculum at the world-renowned nutrition coaching program, Precision Nutrition, and has helped start multiple charities, including the Health Food Bank and Spezzatino magazine. She runs her non-commercial website, which is a no BS website for women's weight training, and has also written and contributed to a handful of books. But the ebook that explains how Dr. Krista feels about calories and the ebook that had me reaching out for an interview can be found at our website at stumptious.com. Let's dive into the mind of Dr. Krista Scott-Dixon.
Welcome, Krista.
Thanks for having me.
If you could you tell us a little bit how you got into health and fitness?
Oh, that's such a huge question. Um, the way I like to say it in terms of lifting weights is that I was never good at any sports, and I couldn't catch a ball, couldn't run fast, couldn't really do anything, and so for me, lifting weights was like the only thing I could do. So, I got started with weightlifting, and I was in grad school at the time. And grad school, if you're a grad student, you know this, it's pretty hard on your body. So, sitting in my chair at my computer and my butt's getting bigger and, I'm feeling worse and worse. And so I thought, I really need to learn more about nutrition and health and just kind of get myself out of this place. So for me, it really got started as a series of problems that I had to solve for myself. And as it turned out, I just kind of got more and more interested in it as I saw the potential of health and fitness to really transform my body, my life, and just the way I felt about everything. And since then, obviously, I've seen the potential of it to change other people's lives as well.
Did that have anything to do with your major choice, or was that prior to the changeover and starting to get more into health? Did you start studying women's studies before or after?
Actually, I started in fine arts. I thought I wanted to be an artist, and so I started out in visual arts and film. And that didn't work out because I realized being an artist is not the most lucrative kind of life, and I didn't actually like hanging out with other artists. So then I got interested in women's studies, and then from there, I started seeing how health and the body and fitness were such a huge concern for women. I mean, I think we all know that body concerns and health concerns are really at the forefront of a lot of women's minds. And so, it was just a very natural alliance for me. It just kind of emerged very, very conveniently.
Yeah. All right, that sounds cool. Now we're going to talk about your ebook today a lot. So first off, why did you call your ebook "Fuck Calories"?
There was this moment when I was reading and researching and just really immersed in all this stuff, and I could see my clients were getting so overwhelmed and so just information dumped, and they were feeling paralyzed, and I was feeling like, all this information that's out there isn't actually helping them. And I had this moment where I was just like, fuck this, right? Like it was so unuseful. And it also, I thought to myself, people are focusing so much on things that don't matter. And so I wanted to say to all of them, like, screw all of this, like, forget all this stuff that you're worried about because it doesn't freaking matter. And so it was kind of this moment of rage or like enlightenment or whatever, right? Where I just, for me, it was a moment of just, okay, let's throw this out, and also a way to want to tell people you can throw that out too, and that's okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was like a moment of just, it's like, screw this, we don't need these calorie things.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's, I've pretty much felt the same way. I think like people just waste their time. I wonder how, seriously, how much of people's life they spend like counting calories or counting points. And it's just like, why are you going to waste your time on that when you could be doing other things?
Oh, yeah, totally. And it doesn't even work. I mean,
exactly.
That's the worst. That's the kind of the most poignant and painful part of it, is that you think you're doing the right thing and it's not working, right? But you keep trying. Like that's
exactly.
Again, that's kind of a poignant moment.
All right. So also in your book, you refer to eating real food. You say that multiple times throughout the book. What exactly does that mean, eating real food?
It's an interesting question, because I think real food is a little bit of a loaded term now. I think people kind of throw it around, and it has a little bit of moralistic quality to it. But for me, real food is food that looks like what it used to be. So when I look at a chicken breast, I can tell what a chicken breast used to be, right? I can see the part of the chicken, or even a whole chicken, right? Like I could take a whole chicken apart and come up with a chicken breast. Or I can pull a carrot out of the ground and I can see that it's a carrot. So for me, real food is stuff that is very, very close to its origins. And that doesn't mean like I couldn't combine them into a thing, right? Like I could make a soup out of real food, or even I could, in a sense, probably, bake something out of real food. But to me, there is that kind of authenticity to it, that it is close to its origins, and also that it's not created by a factory. It's not created by a lab. It doesn't require some kind of industrial process to make it, what it has become. So I guess that's how I would really define it.
And with that, I got a question about two things that you said in the book. And one was orange juice is not real food. And the other thing you said is you should cut the fat off your steak, but not for the reasons you think. Can you talk about those two things?
Yeah, so orange juice is not a real food. There's a really interesting book, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's about the history of orange juice. And it talks about how orange juice was created as part of a World War II effort to kind of figure out how to get adequately nutritious rations to soldiers in some kind of portable format. And the early processes for creating orange juice, where they tried boiling it and it tasted terrible. So they tried a bunch of other things, and it became the process that we know today, which, so we go to the grocery store and we buy something that looks very natural and says fresh squeezed or fresh taste or something like that, natural. And we think of orange juice as a product that is very wholesome because we can squeeze it ourselves, right? We can ourselves make orange juice. And I think in our mind we imagine that that's actually what happens when commercial orange juice gets made, but it's really not. There's solvent extraction and adding flavor back in and freeze drying, and I think the book is called Squeezed. I think that's what it is, but it's an incredibly industrial process. So orange juice is not a real food if you're buying it in the store. Now, if you're making it yourself, then yeah, it's a real food. Take an orange or two, throw it in your Vitamix blender, you got orange juice, right? You're good. But what you're purchasing is not a real food. It's not even anywhere close to a real food. Essentially, it's chemically flavored sugar water. Now, in terms of cutting your fat off your steak, but not for the reasons you think, that's because the fat tissue of animals carries whatever it's fed, or it's kind of like a holding tank for a lot of what the animal has in its environment. So if you're eating commercially raised beef, you're consuming a lot of crud that the animal might have consumed in a commercial feedlot. However, if you're buying grass-fed beef, eat that fat because it's freaking delicious. Same thing with pasture-raised pork or pastured chicken or whatever. So you can think of fat as like a storage depot in a sense for the health of the animal. So if you're buying, again, if you're buying meat that's conventionally raised, consider minimizing your exposure to the toxins that might be in it. But if you're getting it from a small farmer, organic, it's pastured, yeah, go and eat the whole thing, right? Nose to tail, everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the comments you made about the orange juice, and people got to understand that that's just orange juice. That's not all the other juices. That's not all the breads and all the stuff they're taking these things that are from nature, but they're just manipulating them so much that it's no longer food. And people don't understand that, and I think that's a really important point to get across to people.
Well, and I have a lot of sympathy for that because the marketing campaigns with these things are so powerful and so careful in their use of language, right? Like, so if you go to the supermarket and you look around, the words like natural, healthy, organic, there's like a little picture of a farm or like a milkmaid on it. It's very, very easy to think. I mean, marketers are very aggressive in kind of making us think about what's healthy for us and what's not. So I really don't blame people because it's very hard to pull out the messages that we're being fed.
Yeah. What do you say to someone that you educate them and they still believe or choose to drink orange juice that's from the store, when you've told them and you've educated them that you've said, hey, this isn't real orange juice, this is manufactured, pasteurized.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, what do you say to those people?
Well, I think your question really points to the fact that information and education alone is not enough, right? And I think if information was enough, we would all be perfect. But most of the time, clients, and this is kind of hard for fitness trainers to understand, clients don't always respond to information. So everyone knows that smoking is bad. People still do it. So, or driving without your seatbelt, or all these other things, and yet we still do it. And so I think that really points to the fact that there are deeper motivations and deeper associations for behavior. And I like to say that every behavior solves a problem. Something about drinking that orange juice is giving people something. And maybe they still think they're being healthy. Maybe they still think they're getting that vitamin C. And my providing information and education is not what they need to solve that problem, because the problem is something else than I think it is. It's not an information deficit. So I think that's a question. It's such a great question because that really confounds a lot of coaches, because it's like, well, why don't I just tell you that's bad for you and you'll stop doing it? It doesn't work.
Yeah. So what do you recommend for? Let's say they're drinking. They find the problem is that they believe they're getting vitamin C from the orange juice. You still have to educate them, don't you? Or what would be the next step for you to get them off of this processed orange juice? If their problem was they think they need vitamin C.
Yeah, and I think your question points at a few interesting things, and one of them is understanding what the real job to be done is of this orange juice. Like, what do people think that this choice is doing for them? So that's kind of piece number one. What would be an alternative solution to that problem that they think they have? So, if I feel like, okay, this is my only health affirming act, right? By drinking orange juice, I'm getting vitamin C and that makes me healthy. Well, that's kind of a problem I'm solving in this way. What's another way to solve that problem, right? So educating them about alternate solutions to the problem and giving them substitutions. So I can't just take stuff away, right? If you're, and I'm going to use a different example, which is smoking. If I smoke to feel better, you can't just take my cigarettes away, because now I feel terrible and there's nothing else making me feel good. So I have to kind of introduce some other behavior that makes me feel good or meets that need that I'm looking for. And so what often happens is when people start exercising, they naturally quit smoking or they cut down their smoking because now exercising is making them feel good. And it's helping them handle stress in the way that smoking did. So it's becoming a substitute for the smoking, but I can't just take the smokes away. So I hope that makes sense as an answer. Mm-hmm.
what are some other examples that you could give for example smoking? Because I mean, not everyone likes exercising, even if it does make them feel better.
Yeah, what are some other examples? I have noticed some really great results with simply expanding people's food repertoire. And so instead of saying, oh, you shouldn't do that, like I don't even go there. I'm like, hey, try this. This is yummy, right? Like this is an interesting, option, or just kind of expanding their range, because one of the other issues is that often people's sense of the options available to them, they feel like they have this very narrow range of options. So if I take one away, then they're like, oh my God, I only had 5, right? And now I only have 4 things that I can use for solving problems, right? So I like to add things in. And so then that gives people a much wider toolbox. So one day they might wake up and go, you know what? Those actual oranges are really good. Maybe I'm not going to have orange juice for my vitamin C. Maybe I'll have an actual orange, because Krista showed me that these are these really delicious oranges that are in season right now, and they're really good. Like they come right from Florida. They're here in 2 days after being picked. They taste so much better. Okay, now I have that option. I can do this or this. And over time, what will often happen is I'll move towards the better option.
Yeah, that sounds good. Another title of in your ebook is "Don't Think About Your Food. Trust Your Body Instead." It never bullshits you. So, what do you have to say about "Don't Think About Your Food"?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is such a uniquely 21st century problem, right? Is that we think about everything. And we really get bogged down again in information overload and decision fatigue. We're just exhausted from making all of these decisions. But more than that, we put the responsibility for something in a place where it never should have been. Our minds are really, really bad at making body decisions because they just don't have the apparatus to do it. So, and the other problem is that there's lots and lots of books out there about this. There's a book out there called "You're Not So Smart." There's lots of other great books about thinking, but thinking is riddled with delusions and inaccuracies and misperceptions. And I mentioned being a grad student, being overweight. I was 50 or 60 pounds overweight. I'm 5 feet tall. Okay, so you can just imagine, like I was as it's indisputable. You can't hide it on a 5-foot body. Yeah. But in my mind, I said to myself, oh, it must be the dryer shrinking my clothing, right? So that's what the mind does. Meanwhile, my body was saying, hey, I'm hurting here. Like I felt rotten. My knees were hurting. My hips were hurting. I felt crummy. So our mind is a real big liar. But our bodies are very brutally honest, right? Like if they don't like stuff, they will tell you. If you have a food intolerance, it's all over you. If you get food poisoning, you're puking. Like your body is just, I like to say it's like this kind of socially inappropriate friend that will just say that thing, right? Like, hey man, you got spinach in your teeth, right? Like they'll just say it and be brutally honest about it. And so in terms of gauging how much to eat, if we are attentive to and understand our body's signals, we will eat the right amount for us. It's just that we've gotten so out of touch with what those signals are, we no longer hear them. And so then we try to rely on our brain, like, okay, I'm just going to tell myself how much to eat. But the body's very, very self-regulating, so it has other plans. And then so we become full of misconceptions, right? Like I should eat this, I shouldn't eat that. I shouldn't be hungry now. Often with clients, when we start them with mindful eating, they get all kind of freaked out because they're like, I'm not hungry now and it's dinner time. I'm like, don't eat. Or they'll say, I just ate 2 hours ago, now I'm hungry again. Great, eat. Yeah. Right? But for them, it's not on a schedule or it's not following the rules. Well, bodies don't follow the rules. They follow their own plan. Right. So the more you can kind of work with that, the better off you will be. But it is a little bit freaky. I totally understand.
Yeah, I think it's very important for people to listen to their bodies. And if they just did that, it'd be so much easier.
Yeah, but we've lost the skill, right? Like little kids have it. They just eat when they're hungry and they stop. And you can't make them eat more than they want.
Yeah.
But I think people get very frustrated with the idea of listening to their body, because they say, I don't even really know what that means. Like
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel that. Like, what the
Yeah.
heck does listen to your body mean? It's very
Yeah.
vague, right?
Yeah. So that's good stuff there. Another title you had is that was pretty interesting. It's your relationship stupid, and then you go on to state that in your own experience, 90% of your clients, the eating problem is actually a relationship problem. Could you speak on that for a while?
Yeah, and I think we want to define the word relationship, really broadly here. So it could be your relationship with other people, like other actual people, your partner, your friends, your family. It could be your relationship to the world, your relationship to your life, and it can be your relationship to yourself. Typically what we see is in folks who have eating issues, there is some kind of relationship deficit. So either you can't ask for what you need, or you don't know what you need. What you need is kind of opaque to you, like you can't sense into what you need, you can't say what you need, and even if you could say what you need, you're not willing to ask for what you need. So that's kind of one cluster of things. Another challenge that happens in relationships is relationship stress. You know, you get friction between you and someone else, between you and yourself, between you and your environment, and that produces problems. One of the most significant, well, there are two kind of very significant correlations with disordered eating. One of them is trauma. So we see this especially in women. If there's some kind of early childhood trauma, that is very, very closely linked to serious disordered eating. The other thing that's very closely linked to disordered eating is what's called alexithymia, which means literally no words for mood. So you cannot say what you are feeling. And so the food and the eating and the thinking about food and the food behavior becomes a way to kind of manage those sensations and manage those emotions, whether that's to kind of just modulate the intensity of things or to numb it out, to soothe it. You know, there's lots of directions you can go with it. But fundamentally, this is a connectedness problem, right? It's a relationship, connectedness, interaction kind of problem. I would say, like if I'm being totally unscientific about this, I would say that in our female clients, I would say about 80 to 85% of their foundational problem is an intimate partner issue. So their husband, their female partner, like whatever, it's a spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend problem. And then I would say in about 10% of the cases, it's their relationship to work. And then in about 5% of the cases, it's like some miscellaneous thing, often their relationship with their mother. And I don't mean that in like a Freudian kind of like psychoanalytic sense, but often they're caregiving for aging mothers, or their mother's very critical and is very present in their life as a critical voice, which they then internalize. So, you know, and then you can have all these things together, right? But very rarely do we see people who are totally relaxed and happy in their lives who have eating problems. It's kind of as simple as that.
Yeah. So for these relationship problems, for you as a coach, is it mostly handled through talk therapy, or like do you talk it out with them, or what do you recommend? What do you recommend for these people?
Yeah, you know, each person is different. Some people will arrive at this on their own. You know, they'll come to it fairly quickly and they'll be able to figure it out, sort it out. Other people will need much more extensive work, again, depending on the nature of the problem, right? So with what I would call easy clients, in the sense of like clients whose problems are fairly uncomplicated or you know, easier to fix, I find that mindfulness is great. And the eat slowly thing is a really great tool for this, because what will happen is we'll say, okay, eat slowly with no distractions. And after 48 hours, people are going nuts. They're just like, I can't be alone with myself. I can't be alone with my partner. It dawned on me that I hate that guy. Like, it's really funny what happens after 2 or 3 days of just being present. So, you know, so the more you practice mindfulness, the more that floods into other areas of your life, right? So you start to think about, like, who am I in this relationship? How am I showing up to my interaction with this person or this person? So mindfulness is an amazing first step. And then I would say, you know, for folks who are really struggling, we always refer out to counseling, like if it's deep stuff. And I love emotion focused therapy. I think that it's emotion focused therapy or somatic psychotherapy, which is psychotherapy that really focuses on the body. I found those to be really, really useful approaches for dealing with eating issues, because cognitive stuff, again, you're getting into the thinky brain problem, right? People don't need more thinking most of the time. They usually need more feeling and sensing and doing. So those are the two that I like to go to: emotion-focused therapy, somatic psychotherapy, and sometimes solutions-focused therapy, because, you know, no one is screwed up 100% of the time, right? So if you're binge eating, you can't possibly be binge eating 100% of the time that you're awake, right? There are times when you're not binging. So what's happening in those other times when you're not binging, and how can we do more of that? So sometimes solution-focused approaches are really, really useful as well on a practical level, because they get people doing things. So feeling, sensing, doing, that's going to be your triad of successful approaches.
And less thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about the relationships and how those cause eating problems. But in your opinion, you know, what is the one thing that you most for the cause of obesity and keeping people obese? So is it the eating problems that come from, you know, whatever, or is it because food quality, or what do you think the reason people get obese are?
Yeah, that's kind of a trick question, because there is no one thing, right?
Yeah.
It's all mutually reinforcing. But I would say, in some way, we as organisms, as biological organisms, have gotten out of sync with ourselves. So other organisms are able to self-regulate. They consume what they need, they excrete what they don't. You know, they're more or less in sync with their environment. We are now no longer in sync with our environment. We are no longer in sync with ourselves. And so, you know, things are getting out of whack. The signals coming in are destabilizing us, right? Like, we're getting signals to eat from the outside, or even from the inside sometimes, that are incorrect. So we no longer, I think, are able to access and effectively use the elegant and beautiful and complicated biological mechanisms that formerly kept us perfectly regulated. And maybe not perfectly regulated, but very well regulated. You know, because if you think about it, like, we consume millions of calories of energy over our lifetimes. You know, and you think most mechanical systems could never regulate that to the degree that they do. But somehow we still manage to kind of keep everything together. So I actually think that, you know, on the one hand, you can say that things are out of control. On the other hand, you can look at obesity as a rather interesting solution that the body has come up with to this very disruptive environmental situation, right? The body's like, uh-oh, extra stuff's coming in. Okay, I got to handle this. I got to store this, right? I have to process it somehow. I'm doing my best here. So I think, yeah, like, you know, we tend to think of obesity as like, oh, the body's all screwed up. The body's kind of trying to handle stuff in its own way, and it's not a way that we like, but it's attempting to solve the problem.
Yeah. So in your book, you also say two things that I really I like. And one is stop learning and knowing, start doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is change. Change comes from doing. And then the other one is ask yourself one tough question. How's that working for you? But how I want to ask this question is, what about people that are constantly changing their plan? They go on a diet for like 2 weeks, and they say, oh, that didn't work, so I'm going to try a different diet. And they jump from diet to diet. What advice do you have for someone like that?
That's such a great question. Such a great question. And I think you've really illustrated the conundrum of like when is something working and when is it not working. One of the things in our coaching at Precision Nutrition that we use is the one habit method. So we give you a habit and you practice that habit. And you practice it and practice it and practice it. And one of the indicators of progress is not did you lose weight, but how good did you become at that habit. So we really try and focus people on mastering the essential behaviors that will then lead to progress. Because I think, implicit in your question, the idea of whether something's working or not really is about the outcome, right? It's about a couple things. It's about the outcome, and it's about a sense of how quickly that outcome should occur. So if I try something for 2 weeks and I didn't lose any weight, well, that sucks, right? Well, no, maybe 2 weeks is not the right time scale for what needs to happen here. So, so we really focus people on do this one thing and master it. Whatever happens, happens, because you cannot control that. So we try to shift people's understanding of what they can control, right? So if you're not getting the outcome you want, we look at that, right? Like, okay, let's troubleshoot the system a little bit and see, like, are we way off base? Are we close? Is it a matter of waiting, right? Like, I think you want to ask yourself, why am I not getting the results that I want? But more than that, I think you have to focus on the quality of the input, on the quality of the behavior, and the quality of the process, right? And I think if you sat down and showed people like, okay, last week you did this, and this week you did this, and 2 weeks ago you're on some other juice fast cleanse, and you sit down to with them and say, look, let's be honest. On the surface level, that didn't work for you, but really, let's be like, did this really work for you? And most people will say, yeah, you know what, it didn't. It really didn't, and the whole thing isn't working for me. Right? It's not just that this choice or this choice didn't work. It's that the whole freaking project of dieting or whatever, that's not working for me. And I think most people will get there pretty easily, actually, if they really think about it.
So you said you focused on habits. So a couple examples of habits might be like going to the gym certain times a week, or what are some habits that you recommend for people to start with?
Well, one of the habits I love personally is the 5-minute action. So do something that is productive for 5 minutes. And I think that's a really great one because that gets people acquainted with the idea of taking action, right? So if I'm sitting around, I'm like, oh, I feel crummy, I'm out of shape, like the idea of what I should do to fix that out of shapeness is so huge, right? I'm just like, oh God, I'm 50 pounds overweight, like there's just no way I can get anywhere from here, right? But if I have a 5-minute action in my toolbox, I'm like, okay, what can I do for 5 minutes? Get up and go for a walk. I can go eat an apple. I can call up a gym and book an appointment, right? Like all of a sudden, I'm able to take charge of this. So the 5-minute action is a great one. And you can do one 5-minute action a day. And maybe that's all you can do, right? Maybe your day is so crazy right now. All you can do is a 5-minute thing. Great. Because at the end of a week, you've got over half an hour of action, right? Which is pretty cool. Or you can do the 5-minute thing several times a day, right? Maybe you say to yourself, okay, every few hours I'm going to get up and just walk around my office for 5 minutes, right? So you can start to see how this really builds some significant momentum. Another habit that I really love is in the book. It's not a secret. It's eat slowly. And it's not just eat slowly. It's live slowly. And I don't mean that like everything has to be slow, but more like mindful and conscious. Because implicit in slow eating is like an awareness of what's happening, what am I tasting, who is with me, what's going on, right? So eat slowly, live slowly. I mean, that's another amazing habit. And I mean, that could be a lifelong practice. Like if you only did that one thing, it would be amazing, probably.
All right, that's good stuff. All right, I got one more good question here for you.
All right.
And it's the section of your book was called titled "Food Story," and you say you don't recommend counting calories, but you say recording what you eat and even taking pictures of what you eat might be beneficial. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because we are telling ourselves stories all the time about who we are, about what we're doing, about how things should work. And so I think we really want to step back and first of all be conscious that we're telling ourselves stories and then understand that we can rewrite those stories. But the first place to begin, is this awareness. I kind of keep coming back to this theme of awareness. And so so thinking about my recording my food as telling a story has a much different connotation than like, oh, I'm going to write down all the stuff that I'm eating and use it to feel badly about myself, right? Like I'm going to see all the ways in which I've failed. Well, what about thinking about it like, what's the story of my day? Like that's kind of an interesting question, right? Like if I capture my day in photographs of food, so my first meal is like a donut and a coffee in the car while I'm rushing to something else. And then my next meal is like a pastry in a meeting that I'm sitting in. And then my next meal is like a takeout lunch between meetings because I'm too rushed. That starts to create a really interesting story about my life and what I'm prioritizing and where I'm placing my attention. And then I can start to look at it and say, okay, how could I rewrite this story? Maybe I want to change the story so I'm a happier person. What would that involve, right? So it's really thinking about it much more as writing your own narrative, reading your own narrative, and being aware of your own narrative, and understanding that you can change that narrative. Even stuff like, oh, I failed today. That's a story, right? That's a story that you're telling yourself. And I don't mean that you can empirically go and succeed, although that, of course, is true. But maybe my one story, I have a picture of a muffin, and that story is like, oh, look at me, I eat that muffin, I failed. Well, maybe the rest of the story is that I ate really well for the rest of the day. Maybe that's the story, right? It's the same day, right? Nothing in the day has changed, but it's about how I interpret that story. So I think that stories are really, really powerful, and the more we dig into our lives and our identities and how we think about ourselves in the world, the more we realize it's just stories on stories on stories and stories and stories, and this book is just another story.
Yeah. All right, Krista, I think we covered lots of good stuff today. I was searching the internet and I found all kinds of articles and things that you've done, but if the audience wanted to contact you or find out more information about you, where should they go?
Yeah, I would start with my website, stumptuous.com. So it's stumptuous.com. So that's a good place to start for me. You can find me on Facebook. So I have a Stumptuous group. There's a Stumptuous page. There's a Krista Scott-Dixon page as well. So wherever you kind of want to find yourself, that's great. And then come see us at Precision Nutrition, because that's where we kind of manifest a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about in our coaching programs. And so we have these year-long coaching programs. We take hundreds of men and women and take them through this process of changing their behaviors one small step at a time. And really it's the only way that works as far as I'm concerned, because we talked about relationships, right? Like that's a place where you will find relationships, you will find that structure, and you'll find that habit-based coaching. So I'm not actually a coach at Precision Nutrition anymore because I write the program. So if you get our PN coaching program, you get me every day in your inbox. So it's like being coached by me, or it's like hearing my voice, and sometimes literally hearing my voice. So those are the three places that you can find me. And of course, I also write articles on the PN blog as well, so you can go and read that stuff. So there's lots and lots of free stuff out there. The We Are Stumptuous group on Facebook is a very thriving community. So everyone's welcome. It's just a bunch of folks hanging out and talking through problems and questions and supporting each other.
Is that mostly a lot of women, or is it men and women?
It's men and women. It's interesting because I used to assume that all my readers were women, and I did some analytics on it. It's about 60% women, 40% men, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so thank you very much, and the viewers have lots of places to go now, and I think they learned a lot about saying fuck calories, and so I appreciate that, and thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Dr. Krista. She has extensive experience coaching people on how to support their health through nutrition, and has used that experience to create what I believe to be one of the best coaching programs in the world for helping coaches help their clients improve their health. I just recently completed the most updated version of the Precision Nutrition Training Program, and I can say without a doubt that it has changed the way I look at coaching. If you are a personal trainer, nutrition expert, or work in any profession where you are trying to help people with their health, this program is highly recommended. Go to precisionnutrition.com to find out more. And with that said, this is Coach Strick saying thanks for listening, and remember, when calories in, calories out doesn't work, that, my friend, is a calorie conundrum.
This podcast, including Coach Strick and guests, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects for the use of any information contained herein. Coach Strick and/or guests may recommend products or services in which they have a direct or indirect financial interest. To find out more, please visit www.calorieconundrum.com.